Today we're going to be discussing how to build our Open Controller Devkit. This is a controller that will connect wirelessly to multiple devices from your Nintendo Switch to your phone. The gamepad has 4 different modes: Nintendo Switch mode, X input mode, D input mode, and wired mode. To start assembly, we'll take our ESP32 and the motherboard and connect them. You'll want the antenna of the ESP32 to be facing the battery connector on the back of the PCB. Once you have the ESP32 in place, we can begin soldering the pins on the motherboard. We recommend a temperature of roughly 325 to 350 C, and have flux on the ready. You may or may not need any depending on how fast you move, as a lot of solder has a rosin core that will act as flux. Once you've got all the pins soldered, we recommend moving on to the firmware install before proceeding with assembly. A link to that can be found in the description. Once you finish with the firmware install, we can continue with the assembly guide. We'll move on to the shell next. Start by placing the buttons into the shell. You may have to use an X-Acto knife and trim away any plastic that causes the buttons to get hung up on the shell. We recommend making sure that you can press the buttons without any membranes in the controller and that they go up and down easily without sticking. This should go without saying, but obviously be careful and do not hurt yourself while trimming the buttons. The plastic's pretty soft, so you don't need a ton of pressure to make the cuts. Once you've got all of your buttons freed up and moving, you can add the membranes to the controller. We can then place the motherboard into the front half of the shell. Finally, we have the bumper buttons. These are somewhat tricky. Some of the shells came from the factory with incorrect button sets. To resolve this, we're providing an extra bumper button with every kit that is universal. So regardless if you got 2 left or 2 right bumper buttons or a correct set, you should now have a full set of buttons. They simply have one pin that goes through them and holds them in place. Here's a better look at what the buttons look like. The universal button has a flat top with no extra plastic, while the side dependent buttons have raised plastic on either the left or the right side depending on the button. Now we'll focus on the back half of the shell. We'll start by gluing the light pipe into the shell. This will make assembling the controller easier. Simply place a small dot of glue onto the light pipe and then place it into the shell. We'll then let that sit for a few minutes and cure while we get the battery ready. We recommend putting some double-sided tape on the back of the battery to help make assembling the controller easier. The battery then gets sat right into place in the back of the controller. Now we can connect our battery. Simply place a connector over top and press down to connect them. You can then place the back shell on top of the front shell and flip the entire controller over to put in the 6 screws. Make sure not to over tighten them. Once you have your controller screwed together and charged up, you can start using it right away. For example, here's me playing a DS game on my Android phone. And that's it. Make sure you check out the guides, and if you have any questions, please email us at support@handheldlegend or join our Discord in the description.